Welcome to the MVP Show. Today we're chatting with Alex Meyer from Iowa. He's a graduate in computer engineering from Iowa State University, currently working as Director of Dynamics 365, AX and 365 for Finance and Operations Development with FastPath Inc. He's a newly minted MVP. So good to have him on air. For full show notes, you can check out nz365guy.com/181. Now let's get on with the show. Hey Alex, welcome to the MVP Show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So good to have you on. How long have you been an MVP now?
I was awarded the MVP in November of last year, so fairly recently.
Okay, so what's your first impressions?
I was welcomed into the community with open arms, and so it's been very, very interactive so far, getting to see all the different channels and different people that are a part of it.
Was an MVP an aspiration of you for a while, or was it like it just took you out of left field?
It was something that I've kind of seen, people in the Dynamics community, receive, and it was something that I knew that, if I wanted to be, one of those higher level, or a community leader, that I would have to get to. And so it was something that I actively strive for the last couple of years to try to achieve.
Yeah, makes sense. Good value. So tell me, what part of the world do you hail from?
So I work for a company called FastPath that's located, our development center is located in Des Moines, Iowa, which is in the middle of the United States.
Okay. Now, I've come across FastPaths probably years ago. I was in a conference in Atlanta, and what I found very interesting around FastPath at the time was that it's kind of like the ability to monitor segregation of duties, making sure that somebody couldn't review or audit themselves in a Dynamics environment. Works really well on-prem. Just out of interest, what's the play now that we've moved massively to an online world?
Yeah, so you probably saw it back when we had an on-premise application. That entire application is now moved to the cloud. So we have a SaaS-based solution that's hosted in Azure. And we're able to, because we sit externally from any of the ERP systems or CRM systems that we audit, we're able to connect to multiple different systems, which works great in the Dynamics world when you have multiple separate systems that you want to make sure all fall under the scope of audit.
Yeah. So what? Normally I don't go into on the MVP show, the companies of people that are MVPs, but this is just a little self-interest here. So what type of industries are you seeing, using this audit technology?
Yeah, so in the States, we see a big push for any company that's publicly traded because we do have audit requirements around like Sarbanes-Oxley. We've seen a big push in the European market or the EU market because of things like GDPR. But we also have a lot of private industries. Simply, they just want to have industry best practice security setup, and so we kind of go across the gamut of different industries. But we do see a lot of things like retail, manufacturing, obviously with the larger enterprise, F&O crowd for sure.
Yeah. So do you see it at all in the dynamic sales, customer service space, any of that type of thing?
If you're looking specifically at somebody just using sales, I would say that a majority of that is, either don't fall under audit or don't have the same security requirements. But we do see a lot of customers that go across multiple. They have, finance or supply chain, and then they have sales as well. And in that case, we do see customers going across into those areas because, for example, you can do process one in your sales, for example, creating a vendor, creating a customer, and then being able to accept a payment or pay that vendor or customer right in your actual ERP system. And so you have that going across that as well.
So what about this? With the Power Platform now, we can build kind of any line of business application, using PowerApps. Are you seeing, I see there's a massive audit requirement in that space, potentially being that, you might create a line of business, mission critical line of business application that It might involve, PII information. It might involve approvals, that are need to be audited, that they got signed off, whether it be on contracts and not. So I'm not talking necessarily the financial data around it, but it could be just, signing a maintenance contract, for example, and making sure that the person approved it, has the authority to do it, has kind of like an approval limit. Do you handle anything in specifically around the Power Platform space?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest areas that we see or that I see from a security standpoint coming up is this idea, because you have two or multiple disjointed security models now in Dynamics. You have your X++, old AX security model within your F&O, and then you do have your CDS, your Power Platform security, which is based on XRM. And so you have these disjointed security models coming in, sharing the same data, and so you want to make sure that you have your data in one environment is the same as in the other, and so that's something that, because we do go across those different systems, that's something that I have to, as the developer side of things, I have to make sure that we're able to actually see, and one is be able to report on it, and then two is be able to actually help see where those conflicts resides and actually help design that security in a correct way.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. Anyhow, I digest. Let's talk about you and your MVPdom and the exciting things that have happened in the last couple of months. Kind of, what's that journey been like for you in becoming an MVP?
Yeah, so one of the things that I kind of strive for, and was obviously becoming the MVP. I kind of looked at what other people had done, to get to that MVP status. And so one of the things that I noticed, and one of the things that I like doing is, taking knowledge that I've learned or things that I have done and sharing that out. And so that's kind of where the idea for my blog came from, was the idea. So I have a Dynamics 365 F&O blog currently. I'm also going to add the Power Platform side, but it's more coming at it from a sysadmin security side. And so that is kind of where that grew from. And so being able to go in there, and especially being able to show the differences in security from your older AX environments to F&O, and then being able to show changes that Microsoft is making in the F&O space from a security standpoint, especially around things like licensing, adding new security object types, things like that. And so just being able to go in and kind of try to be that subject matter expert around those areas was kind of how I started, and then joining from there, going in and actually answering questions on forums and things like that.
Yeah. So I see, various chatter, whether it be on Twitter or people reaching out to me directly. In fact, I've seen it in the Power Platform Happy Hour WhatsApp channel recently in London, where people are asking, I'm in the Dynamics 365 for finance, supply chain, that type of area. How do I start using the Power Platform, and how do I start using PowerApps and Power Automate and that type of thing with Dynamics 365 finance or supply chain? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that there's been more apprehension if you're coming from strictly AX to start branching out and using things like the Power Platform, just from conversations that I've had, because everyone likes to have their own siloed projects. But I will say that one of the things, I was recently in Seattle for an ISV summit that was held at Microsoft. And one of their big pushes this year is making, there are going to be times when a customer comes now to Microsoft and they are using tools that they don't know what the different product is actually coming from. So it's so interjoined now that you're going to be going across systems without even knowing it. And so I think there are plays now for companies where they had strictly done AX in the past, but now they can use things that are in that Power Platform space to help them with their business.
So someone starting out, let's say they wanted to, that they come from deep, let's say AX 365 finance side of things. What would your recommendation be to them, and how they can kind of start their journey on using these technologies together?
Yeah, no, I think you try to look for thing or processes in your environment that are um, that you can either designate to be automated in some way, where or that are currently very manual processes, right? That you want to take and make automated, and then you just kind of have to look. The Power Platform community is a fantastic community as far as reaching out, asking questions, and things like that. And so that would be where I would actually start, is trying to identify what business processes could potentially be automated, and then using the tools that Microsoft has to their full potential, especially around things like AI, machine learning, some of those core functionalities that exist within the Power Platform now.
Yeah, yeah. I got a mate, Will Dorrington, another MVP, out of London, and one of the things that he's definitely in the finance side of things, and I've seen him starting to embed Power Apps directly into Dynamics 365 Finance. Are you doing any of that type of stuff yourself, or are you strictly, you mentioned to start with that you're more on the admin side of things rather than necessarily the maker side of things, but what's your experience?
Yeah, so I have a couple, open source projects with some other X++ sides out on GitHub. And one of the things that we try to do is obviously, again, trying to make the admin side a little bit easier. But even with within our FastPath application, we're trying to start using things, the Power BI platform. And because, visualizing that data it makes it much more easy to consume, especially if you're talking about audit data where you could have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of lines of records, and you're trying to condense that into something visual. Using something like the Power Platform to actually consolidate that data and give you trends over time is something that we take as where the business is going.
So I see A Meyer 505 is where you are on GitHub. You've got 6 projects. Which one are you most excited about in the ones you've got up there?
Yeah, so I think the one that I'm working with, Nathan Klaus, is one that we just started. That's open source. It's allowing specifically to do around administrating security easier. One of the big things within F&O is that it's very difficult to, if you have large amounts of different legal entities and you're trying to restrict what a user has access to, you have to go in and do that manually in the user interface if you're not using something like org hierarchies. And so just trying to make that easier where you can, use the companies of a user that's already provisioned and map those over a little bit easier to any user that they create or modify. And so that's something that we've started working on. We talked about it for a while, and so we started actually getting some of that code out there.
Yeah, so good. So what's the name of it? Is that D365 F&O security converter?
No. So one of them, it's called AAX Security Tools. It's actually a repo that I contribute to. It's under Nathan Klaus's GitHub. Yeah. So, but I do have 2 other open source tools that are out on my GitHub. The F&O security converter that you mentioned. One of the big things in AX or the new F&O is the way that security has changed, about how it actually, depending on where that security is created, will dictate how it's stored. So if you're creating security in the user interface, for example, with an F&O, that's stored as data. And so it's not actually stored as code, so you can't get that natively back into something like a source control system if you would like. And so that security converter actually takes that user interface security data and allows you to convert it back into actually code elements, and allow you to take that and move it back into your security from that standpoint. Yeah. And the other one that I do have there is that task recorder parser. So there's a task recorder functionality within F&O and in AX where you can actually record what a user's doing in the user interface. And the task recorder parser goes in and actually analyzes the output of that task recording and tells you the actual objects, secureable objects that you would have to assign to a user to be able to perform that task. So it kind of goes through and picks those out and gives you that output.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So what's the state of play on D365 Finance? Because we've called it F&O for the last couple of years, but I noticed recently Microsoft starting to pivot there. We see Dynamics 365 Finance, and then we see Dynamics 365 Supply Chain. What's happening?
Yeah, so this has been a point of contention, and one of the things that I brought up at that ISV summit a couple weeks ago was, what do we name this when we're writing about it now? Because in October of last year, Microsoft basically split apart all of the F&O stuff at the highest level license. Used to be operations, activity, and team member. Now that operations level is split out into, like what you mentioned, your finance, your supply chain, your retail, your all of those. And so now all of those are their own separate product, and you basically have to buy a base license and an attached license to that. And so when you're talking about things that go across the platform, for example, security, those go across all of those different areas. Then you can still use either unified ops or F&O to describe that. If you're talking about functionality that is existing only within a particular module, then you refer to the individual module. That's what I was told. It makes it a little bit confusing, but that's kind of how I've been going through it.
Okay, so let me get this right in my own head. So you're saying the base license is D365 Finance, and then you could add on supply chain or retail as an example. Is that right?
Yeah, so based on what access a user would need within a particular environment will dictate what licenses they need now. So you have to have a base license for that user. If they require an operations level or enterprise level of license, they have to have one base license, but then you can have attached licenses that cost less. So it ends up being about the same price wise. It's just that they're licensing a little bit differently from the Microsoft side.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Now, I see one of the contributions you've made in the past year was you're a co-author of a book. Is that right?
I am. So internally at FastPath, one of the things, again, we like to do is get the word out about how, security and how to set it up in a compliant way. And so luckily at FastPath, we have a number of very intelligent audit folks on our team. And so what we've done is we've created these types of audit field manual books for a number of different ERPs, and we take it from a technical and then an audit approach. So we have our audit team kind of write up how you would go about setting up security correctly. And then our technical, we have a technical resource that would go in and add, how do you set this up? And so that's kind of where what we've been doing. And so that's that is the third edition of that book. We started in 2017 and 2018 and then 2019 so far. So every year we try to take whatever's been added in the last year, add that to the book as well. And so basically it's a book to go from an audit side and the technical side and say, how would I go in and set up security correctly?
Yeah. So tell me about the experience of writing. Like, for you personally, what's that journey been like? You're an author. Everyone it's a topic I often drill into with people because, one day I plan to write a book. I don't know what it'll be about, but I do plan on doing it. And I was just, what's been the journey?
Yeah. So, luckily I was able to go in and a lot of the parts of the book that I contributed come from my blog posts. And so it wasn't something where I had to sit down and write hundreds and hundreds of pages at once. I could kind of take bits and pieces and fit them together. But my background is not anything around writing. And so that was kind of a foreign thing when I first started off. And so, but just trying to make it take, very complex topics and try to make them easier to digest and understand was kind of my idea and point behind it. And so that was just kind of something where, I was, had to go in and kind of get outside of my comfort zone a little bit and try to go in and, make these topics easier to understand. And so luckily I had a great team at FastPath to help me out with that. The audit, some members of our audit team had written books in the past, and so I could lean on them for some resources there. But so they made it a little bit easier going forward. But yeah, so that process was eye-opening as well to see all the work that goes into that. So
if someone was going to write a book, what advice would you give them?
Well, one is to just start. That's the hardest thing, is to actually start to write the book. The other thing is to, again, use resources that you do have within your network, or reach out to somebody who has done it in the past to get some best practices and things like that, and to get some advice on topics to cover, what how to go about it. But luckily, Amazon makes it pretty easy to go in and actually self-publish books, or you can do things like that easier. So the barrier to entry is not as high as it may seem, but you want to make sure that you're putting out high quality content as well for that.
Yeah, excellent. Now I see you also do a lot of speaking, various speaking engagements. What's your agenda or speaking schedule for this coming year?
Yeah, so my schedule kind of fills up between going in. I normally go to Summit Europe, so I'll be in Barcelona here in about a month. I do Summit in the fall in North America as well. And then I do a number of local Dynamics communities, AXA chapters. So I'll be bouncing around the country, the North America, US area to different local chapter meetings that they do. Again, going through and explaining how to set up security there. And so, normally speak at things like Focus as well, the Focus conference. So, a number of different opportunities. If somebody would like to come and see me, see that live.
I'm going to Barcelona myself, and I think we go straight from there and fly to Seattle for MVP Summit. So is that your plan as well?
That's my plan as well. So it's going to be a quick couple of weeks between Barcelona and Seattle, bouncing around.
Awesome, man. Well, look at that. Time's flowing pretty quickly by. I always like to do some wrap-up questions, which are just very random about life in general, and see how you can take them. So are you ready?
Perfect. Let's go.
Okay, here's the first one. Would you rather be the funniest or the smartest person in the room?
Oh, I'd have to go funniest for sure.
Awesome. What are some of your personal rules that you refuse to break?
Ooh, that's a good question. Are we talking professional rules or
anything,
personal?
Mate?
Anything. Professional rules, I always like to make sure that I like to make sure I treat any interaction that I have when I'm trying to help somebody as if it's the most important. Trying to make sure I get back to people and try to make sure I help them as much as I can, or at least point them in the right direction. So that's kind of something that I've strived to do, especially now in the MVP space. Personally, I would say making sure you know when to work hard and when to play hard, and then there's a difference between the two. So
I love it. Who would you like to play in a movie?
Either Alan Turing or Nikola Tesla.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Good answers. What's the worst job you've ever had?
Worst job.
And this can go back to when you're a teenager or something like that. What would you call it?
Yeah, no. So I worked at a golf course growing up, and I would say, I worked outside and inside doing bartending and things like that. But I would say the outside work, actually, trying to make the golf course look correct, or nice for everyone. That was the hardest job for sure.
Wow, very cool. If you could compete in the Olympics, which sport would you choose?
Oh, if I could compete, I would probably choose basketball. That would be my dream there.
Who's your favorite team?
So I don't do as much professionally, but my favorite college team is Iowa State, regardless of sport. And that's where I went to college. It's my alma mater. So that's what I cheer for.
Last question. What show on Netflix did you binge watch embarrassingly fast?
Oh, embarrassingly fast.
You back to backed every episode in one hit.
Yeah. I would say Modern Family, surprisingly. That's embarrassingly fast. And there's, I think, 9 seasons of that, but that was very quick.
That's so cool. I think mine would have to be House of Cards.
House of Cards was also, that'd be a close second.
Yeah.
That's a great show.
Yeah, definitely binge watched that. until they removed one of the most important actors. Then I didn't even watch it after that point. So
Yep.
anyhow, tell me, if people want to connect with you online, where can they find you, on the social media?
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned my GitHub channel. That's A Meyer 505. I believe my Twitter handle would be Alex Meyer _ IT guy. So I tweet there quite a bit often. LinkedIn, you can search Alex Meyer FastPath and find me there. My blog, if you want to catch me there, is d365foblog.com. Yeah, I think that about covers it there. So yeah, you can more than welcome to reach out and be happy to help anybody with any security questions, or if they just want to talk about F&O in the Power Platform. Absolutely.
Hey, thanks for listening. Have you heard about the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge? It's free mentoring that I run for a period of 90 days each year. More than 200 people enrolled in 2020. I've opened registration for 2021, so you can go up to my website or the nz365guide.com/90day MC, and that'll take you there. Feel free to register your expression of interest, and I'll let you know when the intake is about to start. Remember, full show notes for this episode can be found at nz365guide.com/181. See you next time.